I recently decided to build a new 29-gallon community tank and use the fish in cycle method when adding my fish. I tested the water parameters every single day and I want to share my experiences here on YouTube in this video. There are a few different ways you can use a fish in cycle method when setting up a new tank, but I decided to settle on these two. I will link to both of these videos in this video's description, but I just want to stress that this is not something I came up with myself. I'm just sharing my experiences with the father fish and aquarium co-op methods. I also wanted a hard limit for this test, so I also integrated stuff from the aquarium co-op water change infographic that I'll also link to in this description if you want to check it out. So here are the basics of the method. On day one, I set the tank up and then I left it for around 24 hours for the heater to warm the water so it would be safe for my fish. On day two, I added 2 Honey Gourami to the tank, and I chose Honey Gourami because where they're from in India, it's hit with the monsoon every single year, so the water parameters change drastically because of all the floodwaters. For that first week, I fed the fish every other day using bug bites, and I tried to give them 2 granules each, so 4 granules in total. But towards the end of that first week, I did start to notice detritus worms in the tank, and the Honey Gourami were definitely eating those. On day 8, I added 4 Corydoras to the tank as well, and after that I never saw a detritus worm again. They absolutely destroyed them. But from day 8, I was feeding every single day using bug bites, and I was also giving them frozen Daphnia every day as well. Then from day 15, I added 10 Neon Tetras and maintained the regular feeding strategy, but just increased the food slightly to account for the additional 10 fish. And then at the bottom there you can see the hard limit that I set from the aquarium co-op infographic for water changes that I mentioned earlier, where if nitrates go above 50 ppm then I'd do a water change, but thankfully we never even came close to that, so it wasn't needed. So the basics of the method is to turn ammonia into plant growth, not nitrites, and I really like this, to be honest, and it's definitely something I'm going to live by with my own tanks moving forward. This method does heavily rely on live plants being in the tank, and this is the plants that I chose. I went with Amazon frogbit, 5 Anubias, 3 Java Fern, 2 Bucephalandra, 1 Bolbitis and some Java moss. In hindsight, I do think this plant choice was a mistake, but I will go into that more later in the video under the things I do differently section at the end, because the majority of these are slow grown plants. Thankfully, the Amazon frogbit was grown at a rapid pace, and as you can see in this image, this is every single week. On a Sunday, I trim the roots, remove about 1/3 of the plant, and then the following Sunday, the roots would have grown again, and I'd need to remove another 1/3 of the plant from the tank. This is the primary filter for this tank. It's just a little cheap sponge filter. It was running 24/7 throughout this test every single day. I did add a hang on back filter on around day 8 if I remember correctly, but it wasn't running every single day. The first 2 days it was just to get rid of the tannins from the water, and then after the tannins were removed it was on maybe an hour or 2 every other day. So this is the stocking levels throughout the process. So on day 0, 0 fish. From day 1 I added the 2 Honey Gourami. Then I added the 4 Corydoras. Unfortunately, I did lose 1 Corydoras, but I don't think that had anything to do with the fishing cycle method. After researching it, I do think it died to red blotch disease, and it was only days after I added it to the tank as well, whereas the other Corys are thriving weeks later. And then as you can see, I added the 10 Neon Tetras, and we haven't lost any other fish since. These are the ammonia levels that I recorded, so there was a slight increase in ammonia from day 1, and as you can see, throughout this test period, it never went above 0.25 ppm. It is a little bit of a pain to research what levels of ammonia are relatively safe for short periods of time, because there's a lot of contradictory information out there. But from what I was able to find, 0.25 ppm really isn't as bad as a lot of people say, especially for short periods of time. These are the nitrite levels that I recorded throughout the test period as well, so basically nothing happened until day 7 when I got my first nitrite reading, and then there's that little hump, and then after that nothing really happened. I actually thought that my test kit was faulty, so I bought some test strips and I tested the nitrites with that, and they were saying 0 ppm for the last few weeks as well, so I honestly think that this is accurate readings. These are the nitrate levels that I recorded throughout the test period, so again, nothing really happened for the first week. Strangely enough, I actually got nitrate levels a day before I got nitrite levels, so I'm not sure what was happening there. It can be a little difficult to judge the colours on the API Master test kit that I was using, so it might be that. But similar to the nitrite levels, there is that little spike and then things kind of stabilise with slight ups and downs moving forward from there. But keep in mind, nitrate levels are not as toxic as ammonia or nitrite, and they never went went above 7.5. This slide shows the ammonia and nitrate levels overlaid on top of each other, with the greeny colour being the ammonia and the more blue colour being the nitrate levels. And then this slide shows the ammonia, nitrites and nitrates. The problem with this slide is the nitrate levels on a ppm basis are much higher than the ammonia and nitrites, like I mentioned earlier, because nitrates aren't as toxic to fish, so it kind of dwarfs the ammonia and nitrites, so you can't really get anything out of it. Anyway, things that I would have done differently if I could rewind time is definitely to add limnophilia. This is my guppy tank, 17 days worth of growth. Day 0 is on the left and today is on the right, and that's how much that limnophilia has grown in 17 days. It is crazy. Personally, I actually really like the colour and texture of the plant as well, but it's turning a lot of the toxins in that tank into plant growth. Other stem plants that may perform just as well include Vallisneria, Ludwigia, Hygrophila and Rotala, but I haven't actually tried any of these myself yet, but I do want to try some of them in my next tank build. Another mistake I think I made was sticking with so many epiphyte plants, and I really wish I had some crypts in this tank. I have them in my guppy tank and my shrimp tank, and I really like crypts. I definitely prefer them over epiphytes, especially Anubias. So yeah, that was my experiences with a fish in cycle. To be honest, I'm very surprised with the results I had, and I'm very happy with it as well. Hopefully you've been able to take something from this and you'll be able to use my data for your own fishing cycles for your tanks moving forward.